If you are new here, this is the most beginner-friendly complete web development course, and these are some of the projects we will be covering in this course. I upload lots of lessons per week, so please subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss any of them. I respond promptly to comments, so if you want to ask or say something, feel free to drop it in the comments. If you missed any of the previous lessons, the link to the entire playlist is down in the description box. Let's get started. So in this section, we are going to be looking at Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a front-end library or framework. It's a very wonderful library, and it really makes the life of a front-end developer easy, right? So I said it's a front-end library or framework. So what do we mean by a library or a framework? Now, a library or a framework is simply a collection of code, okay, a pre-written code that can be included in your project and makes things easier for you essentially. So for example, you want to create a website and you need to create some components in the website, right? For example, the navigation bar, the header, and all that. Now, these sets of code can be put together. So someone puts together a set of code that has the structure of a navigation bar already. So you just pick the navigation, you just pick that code, or you just enter one line and then it includes that code for you. This is what generally libraries and frameworks do. They just make things easier. All right. Now, these libraries and frameworks are nothing too special. They are actually the normal codes that you know that someone has written. Okay. So when you take the library files, the files of a library, and then you open it, you realize that it's the same code that you know, except that since the one who created is more advanced than you, he may use some advanced method of doing some things that you don't know. So the idea is that these people who create libraries are I say seniors or geniuses when it comes to their fields. Okay, so they use some certain techniques to make certain things simple and better for you, right? So if you are going to create it on your own, you may have a lot of trouble creating that particular thing, or you may create it and it wouldn't look so perfect. But when they do it, because they have more experience, they're able to put together something that will makes everything much more better for you. Okay, it makes it easier, it makes it more beautiful, it makes it um everything better. All right, so we will look at Bootstrap in this section, and we'll see how Bootstrap helps you as a front-end developer. Now, there are a whole lot of libraries out there. Okay, so there's SAS. You can also check that out. It's a CSS library. Bootstrap is a front-end library. Some prefer to say framework. Right. So the difference between libraries, the difference between a library and a framework is not so clear. Um, People usually like to say a framework is much a library, sorry, is much smaller. Okay, so it does less, all right, than a framework. We can go into the complex details, but that doesn't matter. Framework is usually more complex and more robust, all right, but you can use them interchangeably, right? So we can refer to Bootstrap as either a library or a framework. Okay, for the purpose of this course, I think I would use the word library. That would make it easier for me. All right, so what is so wonderful about Bootstrap? Now, first, you should know Bootstrap is free. There are a lot of other libraries that are not actually free. Okay, so other nice free libraries are the SAS that I mentioned, which is a purely CSS library. I don't really use it. I know you might find it interesting, so you can check on it. It's SASS, right, or in capital. And you have jQuery, which is also a very useful library. Okay, it's a library of JavaScript. Okay, essentially makes JavaScript simple. It puts long lines of code into one simple line of code. That is what jQuery does. I think you should know jQuery, so you should find time and maybe go to the W3 schools, and then you get jQuery over there, and then you can learn it, or you can go to any YouTube and check out a video or something. So at this point, and from this lesson forward, what we are going to do is going to be a little different, maybe. So throughout the course, I have been kind of like spoon feeding you, but at this point, I think you know enough to be able to learn on your own, right? So that's one skill that you have to be able to acquire as a developer, right? Every day, new techniques come out, new libraries come out, a lot of things, updates to some pre-existing um, libraries and all that. So you need to keep yourself updated, and you need to learn a new library every now and then. So you can't, you don't have to, you know, go and take a whole course just to learn a new library. So it's a skill you have to acquire. Usually we use what we call the documentation of the library or the framework. Okay, so every library or framework has a dedicated website where they have all the um, materials. They show you how to use the library or the framework. So using this the documentation, you can be able to learn how to use the library on your own, and that is what I'm going to show you how to do in this section. So I'm not going to go through it with you one after the other like we did for HTML, CSS, JavaScript. No, you have to acquire this skill on your own. I think this is the point to start. Now, the main features, the main things, or the main benefits that you get from using Bootstrap are these. So you get responsiveness easily. Okay, so I mentioned to you before that your website being responsive is very important, and when you look at this website that you have right here, you realize that it is very, very responsive. Okay, so at this level we have only two cards over here. When I try to open it up, you see that the cards will stretch to fit the screen size. All right, there you go. So this responsiveness is something that Bootstrap easily gives you. All right, it also gives you a mobile first kind of approach. Okay, and what this means is that it is very mobile friendly. Sometimes when you are developing a website, one of the biggest obstacles you come is developing to work perfectly on a mobile device. But when you use Bootstrap, you won't have that issue, right? Finally, is the browser compatibility. Okay, sometimes you write code and you realize it works on this browser, it doesn't work on that browser, and a lot of worrying stuff with regards to browser compatibility. Now, Bootstrap also help you take care of that. Right, so now we are going to be learning Bootstrap from two main platforms. Those are the platforms that I advise that you use. One is the documentation platform, okay? So the documentation platform for Bootstrap, and that is at getbootstrap.com. That's where you find the documentation. But as I mentioned before, when it comes to the web technologies, W3 Schools is a wonderful place. So we will do a lot of the learning also from W3 Schools. They have lots of stuff here that you can go through. All right. Also, one more thing that I think I should mention, from now and for the rest of this course, we'll be working on this platform over here, this website over here. All right, I think the design isn't bad. I told you before that I'm not very artistic when it comes to, I'm not very artistic, so I don't like complex designs. When I design things, I don't like to include too many colors. When you are not too good at colors and then you try to use too many colors, you end up messing up. All right, so I like to keep it simple, and I think so far it's been working nicely for me. So as you can see over here, we have only you have two main colors, the red and then the white. This is actually a design that I made for someone, and I modified it to suit our purposes over here. So this is developed mainly with Bootstrap, all right, and we will be adding Firebase to it later on, so that we have that's when we get to the Firebase part, we have some database and all that going on, right? So it looks quite neat. So it has the navigation, it has the header, and it has these beautiful cards over here, and you see there's this hover effect, right? So, and you can click here to read more, and all that. And it has this thing over here, what we call a carousel. Okay, so you realize that it automatically changes the pictures on its own, and you can also change it yourself, right? Then we have this little section over here. So as you can see, the pictures are changing on their own. This is what you call a carousel, and Bootstrap gives you this with so much, like, it's just easy. You just copy the code and you make some changes to it, right? Usually before you can create a carousel, the amount of JavaScript you have to write is a lot. right? But with Bootstrap you can get it easily, and then you also have this button here which you can click to get back to the top. It has this the home page. You can click here to go down to the events page. You can click here to go down to the contacts page, right? You can click here to go to the about page. Then you can read. There's a lot of stuff here. Then you can click here to go back home, or you can click on the home button as well. And then you have these buttons over here. So these buttons will be adding functionalities to them when we start adding our Firebase. Alright, so that's what we'll be doing in this section, and for the rest of the course, I'll see you in the next lesson. So libraries are usually added to our code by importing them into our code, right? And this is how you do it for Bootstrap, right? So you have two main parts. You have the CSS part, and then you have the JavaScript part, right? So there's a Bootstrap CSS file that you have to import into your code, which is this part over here, right? So you link it in your head tag just like you do for CSS. All right, so you link your CSS and then you link the Bootstrap CSS. Now what this does is that it gives you access to all the CSS Bootstrap files. So essentially this is a path to a file, and this is the file bootstrap.main.css, which lives somewhere online. Okay, and what this this file just has a bunch of code, okay, CSS code that you can easily use in your code. All right, so that's why you need this CSS link, right? The next thing will be the JavaScript. The JavaScript, you need 3 different JavaScript files, okay? The first one will be the jQuery file, right? You remember I mentioned that jQuery is also another JavaScript library, okay? This jQuery is being used by the Bootstrap file, okay? So you have this Bootstrap JavaScript file. This is where the Bootstrap code lives, okay? But the Bootstrap code that lives here is written in a jQuery style, okay, using jQuery. That is why you need jQuery, okay? So Bootstrap needs jQuery. It means that before Bootstrap is even declared, jQuery must have been declared. That is why jQuery is on top, right? So this arrangement is very important. jQuery comes, and then this JavaScript here that we call popper.js. Okay, that one is also used by the Bootstrap. You don't really need it. Okay, so this part, that part, and then before finally the JS file, the Bootstrap JS file itself. All right. So the truth is that this file, okay, the jQuery and the popper.js, do not affect every part of the Bootstrap code that you are going to be using. If you are going to use the JavaScript part of the Bootstrap, okay, using components like the carousel that I showed you before, or you can call it a slider if you want, that has some JavaScript code that has to work. So you would need this jQuery and then popper.js. But when you are doing something like changing colors using Bootstrap, you wouldn't need them because that is just CSS. All you need is this Bootstrap CSS. But it's always important to include them. Just include them whether you use them or not. The thing is that the more JavaScript you include, this bulkier your code becomes. Okay, so this link is actually importing the entire code kind of into your project, and it makes your project bulkier. But at project at this level, usually this wouldn't cause much difference in the speed of the website, right? So first you add the CSS as we said, and then you add the JavaScript. Okay, now they've made things even simpler for you by writing the starter template for you so that you don't have to do copy this, copy that. What if you miss something or you forget something? So usually before you start a Bootstrap project, all you have to do is to come to this the documentation platform over here, and then copy this starter code. Okay, this is like a boilerplate code that we've been seeing. All right, so you just copy this, you click this button here to copy, or you can just do the old way by highlighting all you need. Okay, all right, so you highlight or you copy from here, and then you paste it in your code, and I think from there you are good to start. There's one more thing that I need to mention. Okay, so When you are doing this, you are using what you call the CDN, the Content Delivery Network. That is when you are linking using these links, when you are linking the files using these links, right? So you are using what you call the CDN. So in this case, you are using the Bootstrap CDN. Right? There's another way of doing it. That is to download the files to your project. Okay, so the jQuery file, the Popper.js file, the Bootstrap the Bootstrap file, okay, which is this bootstrap.min.js. Okay, and there's a you can go here to download those files. What this does is that the essence is that when you link them like this, the files live online. So in order for your project to function properly, you need to be connected to the internet at all times. But these do not use any serious amount of bundles, so or internet data, so you didn't have too much issues. All right. But once you use them, you need to be connected. Now, if for some reason you can't be connected to the internet, then you can go ahead and then download the files. You go here and then you get all the files, you download them, and then you link them just like we've been linking our JavaScript file. But in that case, so it depends on where you put them. So the file name will be bootstrap.min.js. So if you put it in your JS files, then you can link it here like you link your main.js or something, and you can do the same thing for CSS depending on where you put it. You can link it, so like we do for um, our style.css file. Now, Bootstrap has a lot of features. I mean, a whole lot. There's a whole lot you can do with it, but you don't necessarily have to memorize these. I'll show you how we use them as we go along. All right, so it has a lot of components. So all these that you see here are components. Okay, so if you want to add images, this jumbotron, I'll show you what it is. Okay, this alerts, the buttons, badges, and all that. Okay, the carousel that I use will probably be somewhere here. Okay, this is carousel modal. You see all their uses as we go along. Of course, the ones that we use, the other ones you can learn them on your own, as I mentioned, right? So I'm not going to spoon feed you in this particular lesson, but of course you will go through a few of them so that you see how some of them work. All right. Okay. Now, before you actually start looking at the components themselves, there are some basic things that you really need to know and master it well. Okay, the first one, this containers part is not too big of a deal, right? It's essentially the container class that you've been you doing. That's what this does for you, right? So there are two main classes. I should have mentioned this much earlier. What CSS, what Bootstrap does, or how you use Bootstrap, is that you have in your HTML. Okay, let me open the code that I use for our project and then show you what I mean. All right, so these are the files for the project, and this is the HTML file. All right, so when you look here, you see there are a number of classes over here. These are Bootstrap classes. Okay, so when you are working with Bootstrap, what you are doing is that you are using classes to style your element, right? So these classes have been already styled. Okay, so you know how you style in CSS. That is when you add a class, then you go to the CSS, then you target that class, and then you style. Now these classes that you add here have been targeted in the Bootstrap file. All right, so over here I downloaded the Bootstrap file. I didn't use the CDN, but when I start working on the project with you, we'll be using the CDN. Okay, all right, so these classes have been edited in the Bootstrap file, and if you open their file, you realize that it's just like the CSS you've been doing. So they've targeted the class and then they've edited it there. So you just have to add the class and then you get the styling that they did over there. All right, so let me see. All right, so this is a good example to explain what I'm trying to explain this concept to you. Right, so what we have here, py1 here, means padding in the y-axis of 1. All right, so that is padding top, padding bottom. All right, so they have this class in their CSS file and they've edited it in various ways. Okay, so if I say py1 here, if I add the py1, which is padding in the y-axis of the degree 1, it means I want padding on the top and on the bottom for my element of the degree 1. Right, that doesn't mean 1 pixel, it's actually bigger than 1 pixel. And adding this class over here, this class represents background danger. Right, And what this means is that I want the background of the element to be danger, and the element that is being styled here is the navigation bar over here. All right. So yes, that is how CSS works. You style by adding classes. All right. So let's go back to what we were trying to explain before we got here. All right. So Bootstrap containers. Okay. So they have two major containers. There's the container, the normal container, and then there's the container fluid. Okay. This works similar to the way we've been creating a container class in the previous projects. All right. So over here, what's happening is that the difference between them is the container doesn't span 100% of the width. Okay, it leaves some margins around, as you can see over here, but the container fluid spans the entire width. All right, and but both of them are responsive. Actually, the container fluid is much more responsive. This one is, I think, fixed. Okay, but the container fluid is very responsive. All right. Yeah, so you can read the rest of these on your own. As I said, on for this particular library, the learning is going to be on your own. Actually, you'll be learning a lot of libraries as you go along, as I've mentioned before. So you have to get used to how you learn libraries on your own. Now, grid is very, very, very important. The grid system is super important. I can't overemphasize that. All right. So you need to master this grid system. You really need to. All right. So let me quickly take you through how the grid system works. All right, so this is how the grid system works. So essentially, we are dividing the width, okay, and it is divided into 12 parts. All right, so 1, 2, 3, all the way to 12. Okay, so this is how you use the grid to arrange elements. So for example, if you have 3 elements and you want them to have equal width, all right, what you have to do is to give each of them a span of 4, 4, 4, right, and then they will line up in the same line, all 3 of them, with the same width. But if you have, say, 2 elements and you want one to be bigger than the other, if you want one to be 2 times bigger than the other, you can have one to be span of 4 and the other to be span of 8, and this is how the arrangement is going to be. And if you have 2 elements, you can have something like this. If you have 1 element, then it can just span the whole of the width. All right, so this is how the grid works, and I can show you over here with our project. We have a grid system actually here. So when I go down to the cards, yes. All right, so let me just summarize for you how this arrangement works. Okay, so it's just like we've been doing before, but with slight changes. So first you have a container, and as you can see, our container here is the fluid type, the container fluid type, which means it spans the whole width. All right, and inside the container, usually you want to have a row. Okay, so you are dealing with rows and columns. All right, so row is this whole line. Okay, is one row. This whole line is one row. That whole line is another row. That is another row. Okay, now inside each row you have columns. So inside this row we have this column, we have that column, and then we have that column. All right, the same way over here we have one column, then the column 2, but the entire thing is, so when I look at this entire container that we have here, I can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and then each row has different number of columns. This one has 12 columns, this one has 3 columns. All right, and when you look at our project over here too, so we have 2 columns over here, one column, we have 2 rows over here, one column, one column, one column, one column. But this is not actually so. When I'll explain to you how can we have them like this. Alright, so how this one is arranged is such that, let me expand it a bit. You see what I mean by this website is responsive. So when I expand it a bit, when I go to a much larger screen size, you see that they are all in one line. Okay, so over here they are occupying a span of 3 each. And then if I go to a smaller screen, a medium sized screen, now they are occupying 6 each. All right, the columns, so each of them is occupying 6. That's why you have only 2 on the line and another 2 on the line. And if I go much smaller again, you have them stacked on each other. So now they are occupying the entire, not the entire width, I left some space around it, so they are occupying 10. So the remaining 2 is the margin that we have around it over here. All right, let me show you how I did that using the code. All right, so inside the code over here, you can see that I have some classes over here. So I added column MD of 6. That is to say that on a medium sized screen, let me start from the large. So you have column LG of 3. That is to say that on a large screen size, I want this div over here to occupy a span of 3. And I did the same thing for all the 4 cards, so you can see that this one also has that. That one also has it, and this one also has it. All right, so you do the same for all the 4 of them, and on a wide screen they will stack next to each other. And here I'm saying that on a column and a medium size screen, I want it to occupy 6. All right, so that's this column MD6, and I do once again for all of them. And that means that on a medium size screen, each card will take, by card I mean this card over here, each card will take a span of 6. That means you can only have 2 cards on one row. All right, and then finally, when you do column without adding any size, it means on the smallest size screen, that is usually mobile size, mobile phone screen sizes, I want it to occupy, each card to occupy 10. And that's why when you went small to the to this screen size, that's why they are now occupying, there's only 1 card on a row. So that is exactly what is being demonstrated here. When you have column small, it means on a small screen, column MD on a medium size screen and all that. Now that we know how Bootstrap works in the background, it's time for us to see some of the other features. But as I said, a lot of these are going to be on your own. You can see there's a lot of stuff here. Now, we've learned the idea behind all these ones. We've learned how they work, and we've learned that it's the same CSS and HTML that we've already done that are used to do all this. That is why I want you to go through them by yourself and see how they come together. All right, so I'll just go through the typography here with you, and then I'll go through the colors, and then the rest of it will be for you. So try as much as possible to go through some of them. The truth is, you don't need to memorize or master them or anything. Just see how they work, and when you start a project, as and when you need them, you come for them. So for example, if you need to add a table, then you can just go to W3 Schools, or you can go to the official Bootstrap website, the getbootstrap.com. You can go there, and then you can check out Bootstrap table, or you can just Google Bootstrap tables or something, and then you should have examples that you can use. So most of the time you just copy the code and then you make modification. You see how we do that as we start our project. All right, so the typography. All right, so we have a number of typography classes. First is this H1 to H6 classes. Okay, remember we have HTML elements that are H1 to H6, which are the headings, right? In this case, you are not talking about the elements, you are talking about classes. So you add them as classes, and this can be added to all sorts of elements. All right, so when you give an element an H1 class, okay, an H1 Bootstrap class, means you want it to have the size of a heading 1 element. All right, or if you give it H2, H3 all the way. Now, if I should show you an example, this element here, this link element here, I've given the class of H4, which means I want it to take the size of an H4 element. Now, as I said, you can give it to any element at all. All right. Yeah, so we have a few other typographies. We have this display headings. These are for extra large headings. Okay, so these are massive heading sizes. All right, so you can have the display 1, so it's display -1, display -2, all the way to display 4. All right, and they work just like the H1, H2, and all the rest. All right, there's no big of a difference. So you can have the rest of these that you can use, but mostly I don't know, they are not too important. You can check them as if you want. So now the Bootstrap 4 classes. Okay, there are a number of Bootstrap 4 color classes. There are a number of colors. Okay, it's the same colors that you know, but they've made a simpler, a more simple way of adding classes. All right, so these are the classes: the text muted, text primary, text access. So if you add text muted to let me use the text danger, it's easier to explain. If you add the text danger to an element, whatever the element is, it means you are giving the text a color of red. Okay, if you add the text danger, okay, danger here represents red. So when you look at them, you have all the other colors here. Okay, this text muted. Okay, this text primary, this color over here, this is text success, this is text info. All right, as you have here, this text warning, this one, this is text danger, this text secondary, and all, and the rest. All right, so they are very simple to add. Let me see if I can get you an example here. All right, so as you can see here, we have text light. All right, text light is one of the Bootstrap classes. All right, to give the text in this element a white color, and we also have BG danger. Okay, this is background danger, and that is to say that the background, we want the background to be of the color danger, and this is how you use Bootstrap classes, Bootstrap color classes. Sorry. All right, so let's get started with our project. Of course, as usual, we want to create our file system. So we want to open a new folder here. We want to call it the Gym Freaks, and then we will go over to VS Code and then add some files to the folder. All right, so as usual, our first file will be the index.html, and then we will have a folder for CSS and a folder for JS. You should know how to do all these things by now. And inside the CSS, you want to have a new folder. You want to call it style.css as usual. And then JavaScript, you want to call it main.js. Now, there are a number of files that we will need to add to these files, but for now, let's go ahead and open our index.html file and start adding some code. All right, so we need a boilerplate code. Let's go over to Get Bootstrap and then get the boilerplate code. So go to getbootstrap.com. Then you go to Get Started, and we scroll down here. We should be able to get the starter template, copy it, and then add it to our file here. Now we just need to modify this a bit, all right? But for now, we can start the live server for us to see what's going on. All right, so our live server is ready, but before we go ahead and start coding, let me show you what we have in our boilerplate code here. All right, so you already know the viewport meta tag and the character set, so we won't talk about that. And this one here is the Bootstrap CSS. Okay, this is the link to the Bootstrap CSS, which lives somewhere on the internet. We will not worry about it, but this is the link to where it lives online. So as you can see here, so this is bootstrap.main.css. This is the minified version of the CSS file. All right, we'll talk about minification later. Minification is simply making a file smaller. Okay, so this code that we've written, as you can see, there's a lot of spaces here. I said later, but we are talking about it now. I think we should just get it done. All right, so you can see there are a lot of empty spaces here which make our code neat and all that. But when you take your code online, when your code is living on a server, it doesn't need all the server or the server doesn't need all these empty spaces to understand your code. It's just for you to understand. All right, so there are some resources that are used for what we call minification. All right, what it essentially does is that it squeezes all this code into a smaller file format. All right, sometimes it puts the whole code on one line so that such that there's not even a single space between them, because each space that we leave actually take up some file size and make the size bigger. So by doing that, it reduces the size, make it faster. All right, I hope you got that. All right, so this is the minified version of the Bootstrap CSS file. When we come down here, as you can see, they said optional JavaScript here. That means that this is where we will add our JavaScript file. All right, so add the file, give it the source of first go to JS, and then we say main.js, and that is our JavaScript file. All right, so down here you can see as the order has been listed for us: jQuery first, then Popper, then Bootstrap JS. All right, so we have over here what you call the jQuery. Right, it's another library of JavaScript. Bootstrap kind of depends on it. That's why it is here. That's why it's up there. I think I've already explained it. And we have Popper.js, which also Bootstrap depends on. And then we have the Bootstrap JavaScript itself, right? Sometimes you can do away with the first two if you are not going to be using the functionalities or the JavaScript part of Bootstrap, right? But for small projects like this, these files wouldn't add any serious additional file size, so we just leave them. All right. So yes, so these are the files that we currently have, and then we've added our own JavaScript. Now what we are going to do is to modify the file. So we can first delete this one. All right, we don't need it. We'll add our own. We can change the title to something that we want. So we can change the title to something like the Gym Freaks. All right, so I'm guessing that you are already acquainted with some of the things that I'm going to do here. You know your way around things, so we wouldn't spend too much time, explaining things into details. You've already done that in the project. So if you've forgotten something, it's simply you just go back and then revise it, and then we move on. All right. But of course, I'll try to be as slow as possible, especially the parts where we've not have come across before, so that you get to appreciate it better. All right, so the Bootstrap CSS file is here. We need to add our own CSS file. All right, so of course we do that by linking our CSS file here using the link tag relationship style sheet as usual, and href of CSS style.css, and then of course the type, which is text stroke CSS. Right, so our CSS file is linked. There are some additional tags, meta tags that we could add, maybe the name tag and all that. So let me just I have it here. Let me just copy and paste it to save time. It's not all that necessary, but you can also add it, so you can see what I've added here. All right, and you can also add it. It's no big deal. Now, before we start, let me remind you once again that this is the project we are trying to replicate. This one right here. It's a simple website, and I said very soon we'll be turning into a web app with users registration and all that, right? And we'll be doing that using Firebase. But for now, we are doing the design, the website itself, using Bootstrap. All right. This part here shouldn't be there. I'll get rid of it. So this is what we are trying to replicate. All right. Okay, so the next part that we are going to deal with is going to be the all right, the code looks a bit messy here because there ends a lot of spacing. We'll deal with that shortly. Now we are going into the body. We are done with the head for now. We are going into the body. Let me give some space here to make it clean. All right, so the next part we are going to deal with will be the navigation bar. As you saw, what I just put here, we have some nice navigation bar with red background, right? So let me show you how you deal with projects like this. So you go over to the Bootstrap website, or you can Google and then find a template or something, or you can go to the W3 schools. So when I go, I say navbar, right? Meaning I'm looking for a navbar component. You call these things components, right? So they give you suggestions here, and then I go for the navbar. Now when I choose navbar, this comes, they will give me all kinds of navbars. Okay, they'll give me this one. All right, this is a drop down, and if I scroll down, I'll get other navbars that I can use, like this one, like that one, okay, like this one, a whole number of them. All right, but the one we are going to use is the first one here, a very simple one. All right, so if you want to learn from here, you can use the information they have here. So you can see all the classes that are in here, and then you can learn about what each of the classes is doing. All right, so what you do is that I just copy the code over here. All right, so I'll copy the code from here and then bring it into our project, and then we'll make changes for it to suit our project. As I said, it's a lot of copy and paste, but you need to understand what's happening in the background to be able to properly use it. All right, so this is what you get. I've saved it. When you save it, so you have a div, all right, and the div, inside the div, okay, so if you first have a nav component, you have a nav component, right, with these classes. Okay, so navbar expand, you don't really have to worry about all these things. All right, you will see how they are used as you go along. Now when we save, you see that we have it here. All right, this is the component that we just copied. Okay, so when you learn about it, you realize that this navbar expand large is what makes it, this drop down here, expand when we increase the size of this window to a large screen. So you see that it has expanded. All right, and when you come to a smaller screen, it closes down. and that is the work of this navbar expand large. When I get rid of it, you see that that functionality will be disabled, right? But I don't want to expand on the large. I want it to expand even when we get to the medium sized screen. Okay, so you see now it's expanding a little earlier. All right, so that's just for our project. As I said, you have to modify it to suit your project. Okay, let's go forward and modify a few other things. All right, so I want to change this background to danger because you want a red background, and I also want to give it a padding in the, we want to give the elements here, okay, we want to give them a padding in the y-axis of 1. So as you can see, we have the background to be danger and all that, right? But the text here is now dark, unlike in our project. We'll take care of that very shortly. The next thing is this anchor element over here. Okay, this is the brand. Okay, this is this one over here. Usually some companies will put a logo there, some will put their name, but usually it's a link that you click to go back to the home page. All right, so that means that we have to change this to index.html. All right, that means when you click it, it should take you to the home page. All right, and then we want to change the content here to, in this case, the name of our company. I also want to capitalize the text. Want it to start with capital, even though I've done that here. Usually want to make it, want to put it in the code so that if you forget to do it, it will be done. All right, so we want to add a text capitalized to the classes. All right, so we want to see text capitalize, text capitalize. And then you also want to increase the size of the text to an H2 size. Now this one over here, we don't have to mess with it. The button over here, this is the button here that you click to make the thing toggle between expanded and unexpanded. All right, next for us to work on is the links down here. All right, the navigation links, okay, that we have here. That is the next thing for us to work on. All right, so in order to save time, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to explain what all these things here do to you. And once I'm sure that you understand what's going on here, I will go ahead and copy and paste my code and then explain what my code is also doing for you. All right, as I said, I don't want to spoon feed you too much at this point because you should get used to the hard way of learning to code on your own. All right, I could easily go through it with you as we've been doing, but that would be easier for me. All right, but that would be unhealthy for you. You have to learn the process. All right, so let's see what we've got here. So we've got a div over here which ends somewhere down here. All right, so inside the div itself has the classes of collapse. That is to say, that is the type of navigation that can collapse. Okay, like this is what we mean. Okay, and this also does something similar, right? And it has an ID so that when it has to be referenced to somewhere in the JavaScript, they can use this ID to target it. So you don't want to change this ID. You change it, you can cause a lot of mess, right? And inside it, we have an ordered list, an unordered list. Remember how we use an unordered list to create our link icons. We've done that before several times, all right? So that's what they've done here, okay? This is just margin right auto. Remember, we've been doing margin right auto in order to give them a well balanced spacing. All right, so this nav, so once you've entered the ordered list, you have a number of list items as we've been doing for links. Okay, the first list item, the second list item, all representing parts of this element. Okay, so the first one being the home link, which is this one, the second one being the link here, which is that one, and so on and so forth. All right, so this active class over here is what makes this home button over here darker than all the other links. It means that it's the active, it's the currently active link. Okay, that is the page that we are at, and we've done it before, and I hope you remember. All right, so that is the active class. So if you are creating, let's say, the about page, then you would add the active class to the about page in that manner. All right, so this is one of the links, this is another of the links. All right, So the hash here, of course, will represent the link that you want to go to. You already know that. And yes, this one is the interesting one. This is a drop down. Okay, so if you want to create like we have here, if you want a drop down inside your drop down, so this is the collapse itself is a drop down. Okay, and inside it, if you want a drop down like we have here, all right, you can use this particular link element. Okay, so it goes from here all the way to down here, and the reason why it's that long is because inside the drop down they've actually added a form. Okay, which we are not going to do for now. So we actually don't need a drop down in our link, so we are just going to remove the drop down parts of the links. Okay, we don't need the drop down. Okay, so it starts here and it ends here, so I'll just copy all this way and then delete. All right, so it should be away now. Yes, so you don't have the drop down there anymore. All right, and you have this disabled here, which is this one here, and they made it disabled by adding this class over here. So if you want a button to show but you want it to be disabled, then you can add the disabled class. This is just like a simple way of using the, we've done this before using JavaScript where we set the disabled to true. Okay, they have made it simple for you by just adding a simple class that says disabled, then you have it disabled. You don't need to add it. So you can see that when I try to click this, it won't work. Okay, and that is the disabled class working over here. All right, and then finally this link over here. So if you want to add something like a search button in your navigation, you can do that using this using this form over here. We'll be adding form later on. For now, we don't need it in our navigation bar, so I will remove it as well. Actually, I'm just going to copy and paste my code, so I don't know why I have to be removing them again. So I've added my code over here. Let's see what is new. All right, so there isn't much that is new over here. So you can see the links, we still have the links here, right? And each link is a nav item, right? As I said, I don't memorize these things. I don't remember them off head. So what I do is when I need them, I go for them. And that's what like every major programmer does. You don't have the time to memorize everything, all right? So there are nav items here. I just want to take you through it, but seriously, you don't need to memorize. You just go for them and you know how they work, so you modify them. All right. So the next time I'm going to create another page, let's say at the about page, I'll just change this active and then I'll just cut it and put it at the about side. All right. As simple as that. All right. So you have a number of links here. I've added a link to the home. I've added an about link and this events and contacts link as well. So we'll be creating these parts in the code as we down as we go along. But I've added them for now, and we'll see how we use them. Okay, so we are done with the HTML for our navigation bar over here. And as you can see, even though we haven't added any CSS at all, it's looking quite cool. This drop down functionality here is added by the JavaScript of the Bootstrap. All right, so let me show you something quickly. If I disable the JavaScript of Bootstrap over here, I think this is it. Sorry, this one. So if I disable this one, you see that it will not work again. As you can see, I'm clicking, but it's not working because the JavaScript is not there, but the design is still there, right? The color and everything, because the color and those things are from the CSS, which is in the head element, right? So this is why you need these classes. All right. Yes, so I've enabled it so you can see it's working again. So we are going to change styles a bit. All right, first we used to finish the HTML and then we go ahead to do the CSS, but now I want us to do the style where we do them element by element. So for one element, section by section, so we will do one section HTML and then we go and do its CSS. We do its HTML, we go and do its CSS, just to have some variety. All right, so of course, before we start, some general stylings. Let me take this opportunity to show you how to create variables in HTML. Okay, remember what variables are used for. All right, you start with the keyword roots like this, and then you open and close your curly braces, and inside it you can now create your variables. You start with two dashes and then you name of the variable, so name, and then you bring your colon and you bring whatever you want to the value of the variable. Let me put it that way. So our example here, we are going to use some variables to store the colors of the Bootstrap. Alright, so we are going to use some variables to store the Bootstrap colors. Unlike in the HTML where we can just mention the colors like text danger, text whatever, we can't do that in the CSS here. So we have to use variables, right? So you can do something like primary, okay, and then we see you add the Bootstrap color for primary. If you want the colors, you can just Google something like the hex of Bootstrap colors, and then you get it. It's no big deal. Or you can get it on the Bootstrap colors site. It's simple to find, right? And then you add the color here, right? So the Bootstrap primary color, which I think is blue, is 007B and then FF, right? Like this. So it's blue, right? So you can do this for the rest of the colors. I'll just copy and paste what I have over here. Okay, so I have my own blue and I have the Bootstrap blue, right? And then I have my own red. I have the Bootstrap red, which is danger. Actually, it turns out I'm using the same one, all right? So all these ones here, from here, they are all Bootstrap colors. These are just additional colors that I wanted to use, right? So I named them in a variable, all right? So next, we want to give the HTML elements some general stylings. As I said, we just want to add a scroll behavior and we want to say smooth. Now what this scroll behavior does is that it gives your website a smooth scrolling. Okay, if someone clicks on a link that takes them to a different part of the website, see when you click on a link, contacts, and then it takes you to the bottom of the page, so it has to scroll through the page to go to the bottom of the page. In that case, this scroll behavior makes it scroll smoothly. We'll see its use as we go along, right? It doesn't work in every browser, once again, just like we saw for one other element, so it might not really work, but whether it works or not, it doesn't really affect your websites. But so no harm done here. So then we'll give some body, some so add the overflow, right? Specifically overflow X. Okay, we say hidden. That's, and then add some fonts family. I just say sans serif or Arial. That's fine. And then we also border box. If you haven't come across this, sorry, box sizing. Okay, this border box. Now what this does is that it's remove any extra paddings and margins that the elements may have, so that you have full control over the elements sizing. And then you add a little bit of styling to the nav bar itself. So you say let's go to the nav, okay, and then you say dot nav link. All right, so you want to target all the nav links, and then you want to add a hover. All right, so you want to hover. When you hover, want to first change the background. Want to change the background color to light. All right, so, like this. And then you want to change the color itself, the color of the text itself to red. All right, you want to add the important keyword so that if there are any difference in the Bootstrap library, okay, if there's any difference in the CSS, Bootstrap CSS, it will override it. All right, so let's hover. All right, so we are getting an effect here, but there's something that we missed that I think is causing this text to look dark here. I want the text to be white. In the let me see. All right, here, so in the nav we use the nav bar type of light. We want to use the nav bar type of dark, the type that gives the text on it white. All right, so there you go. Okay, so it's looking all cool now. So when you hover, you have the nice effect. All right, now there's one more thing. As you can see, when we expand, these texts are too close to this one. We want to move this one to the end here, right? And you know, the traditional way we've been doing it is to use the floats, where we float it to the right. But here we are going to use Bootstrap to make it simple for us. we are going to use the justify content. All right, so let me find that part. Okay, so is this div over here that has those links. So I'm going to use the justify content, and I'm going to say end. Let's see it in effect. All right, beautiful. So as you can see, they are well arranged on the right side here. All right, now let's go on to the header. Okay, the header element where you have the image with some text on it. Right, so we've done this before. We are going to use the same method that we used before. It's so I'm going to go through it very quickly. So first, of course, let's add a bit of so comment to say header section. All right, and want to use the semantic tag, the header semantic tag, and then want to give it an ID of header. And inside it, we want to add a div with a class of container fluid. Like this. And then inside it, once again, we want another div with a class of row. Okay, remember how we said we use the CSS grid. Okay, row, column, that's what you are going to do over here. But this one is not going to be too complex, right? So want a row, and then we want to align the elements in that row to the center. So Bootstrap makes it easy for us to use align items center. Okay, remember the CSS property. We can easily use it in Bootstrap in this manner, right? And then, but I want to give it my own custom class, which is header heights. Right, we use this to edit the header in our CSS, so that we can add the background image and all that. Now, of course, once we have a row, then we must have a column. Okay, so div and then class of column, and then we want to give it our own. Okay, before we add our own class, let's add all the Bootstrap classes that we need. Want the text inside to be white, so we want to say text white. I think it's text light rather. Let's just keep it text white and see what happens. And then want a margin in the x-axis, okay, a horizontal margin of 5. All right. Now we are inside our header. What are the elements that we need? We need, you remember the text and then the buttons. Okay, so first we need an h1. Okay, that says class. We want it to be very big, so we'll give it the display, the size of display 4. And then we want to see text capitalize. All right. And then inside it will say the gym. Once we've said capitalize, it will capitalize it for us, so we don't need to do the capitalization here. And next we need an h4. Okay, and say come let us get, and then finally we add a button. Well, not finally, we add 2 buttons actually. So add the first one, give it a class, then you add the Bootstrap btn class, which makes Bootstrap edit or style it as a button for us. All right, and then we add the text uppercase over here, just to have this also from Bootstrap is double P, so that will give us an uppercase text. And then background, we give it a background, a white background, so background light, margin Y, keep it at 3, and then we'll give it a margin on the right side, also we give it 3. And then we'll give it our own custom class. You see join us button, like this. All right, and then inside the button itself, okay, we are going to add an anchor. Okay, we are going to put an anchor inside the button so that the button can lead. When you click the button, it can lead you somewhere. All right, so we add an anchor, give it an href. Okay, so for now we don't need it to point anywhere, so we just leave it empty, and then we add a class of text danger so that it will have a red color. like this. So what we are doing is actually taking effect, but we can't see it because we made our text white and the background here is currently white. But you can see there's some button here, so it means what we are doing is coming into shape, and we will see it very soon. All right. So for now, let me remove the text white over here so that at least we see what's going on. All right. So this is what is happening for now. Now our button over here, I'll take this opportunity to introduce you to another wonderful resource. It's called Font Awesome. Okay, it gives you fonts that you can manipulate as text. Okay, so they are fonts. All right. I mean icons. They give you icons that you can manipulate as if they were fonts. Okay, like the way you manipulate text, you can give them font size and all those things. Right. So to use font size, let me show you where you get font size. So sorry, Font Awesome. It's called Font Awesome. You go to fontawesome.com. Okay, so I've lost connection. So yes, you go to fontawesome.com, and when you come here, you can click here to search icons. Okay, so you can search what the kind of icon that you are looking for. All right, so you can go something like search or question. All right. Question wasn't a good idea, but yes, it worked. So we have a question mark over here, so you can search something like car. Okay, all right, so you can search whatever you are looking for. Now what you are looking for is the users icon, so I can search for users. All right, and see what I get. So you have all these icons to choose from. All right, so I can choose this one. All right, once you choose it, you have the name. Okay, sorry, before that, so this is what you copy into your code, but before you copy this, you should have gotten the connected the Bootstrap CDN. Okay, and to get the Bootstrap CDN, I think we have to go back to the home page. So when you go back to the home page, you can click start for free. All right, so when you go to the home, when you go to start for free, you can add your email over here. All right, so once you add your email, they will send you the kit code. All right, so after you've added your email, they will send you a confirmation link. You confirm, and then you add a few details. You just follow the procedure. It's very simple. You add your details, and then you sign up. Once you sign up, they will bring you to this page that I am here. All right, so once they bring you here, this is the link that you were looking for. All right, the kit code. So you copy the kit code. You go back to the project. As you can see, the instructions here, it says put it in your head tag. So you go back to your head tag. This is our head tag, so let's put it under our link. Okay, under our CSS, and let's put it here. Once you've put it here, it means you have access to all the Font Awesome icons. Now you can go back here and then search your icon again. So you can search the users, for example, whatever is icon you are looking for, you can easily search and then you find. All right, so once you find the icon, you click on it. It takes you to this page here where you can manipulate, you can change, you can make it regular, you can make it light, you can do a lot of modification to it over here. But what we are looking for here, okay, is this link. So you copy this HTML link. It's not link actually, it's HTML code. All right, so you come back into your code. Where did we need it? All right, over here. So we needed it here, and then you put it there. Okay, so that's how whenever you need any icon, now you don't actually need to go back to the websites if you know the names of the icons, of course, but they always take this format. You start with the I tag, and then the class Font Awesome, and then you add FA hyphen question mark FA hyphen users FA hyphen whatever, but you just need to know the name. If you don't know the name, you can come and search it here and then go through the process just as we did it and copy it here. I can close this for now. All right, so this is our Font Awesome icon, as you can see over here, nice and neat. And just on next to the icon, we want to add some text that says join our team, like that. Beautiful. So there you go. So we want to add another button. Okay, that will take a similar structure as this one. So actually we can just copy and paste and then make modifications. So we copy, copy, paste, and let's see what modifications we need to do. Okay, so for our modification, we don't need this margin right again. All right, and this is not going to be the user's icon. This is going to be the $sign icon. Okay, and we also want to give it a margin of 1. I think that will be all, and then we want to change this to, of course, want to change this to register. Beautiful. So there we have it. So let's now go back to our CSS and add some styling. You add the background color, the background image and its styling. But before that, of course, we need an image. So as usual, we'll go back to pexels.com. You can find your own images, but I'll provide you with these images and you can use the same images. So actually what I've done is I've downloaded all the images we need and I'm going to show you in our folder. Alright, so as you can see here, we are in our main folder for the project and I have added this folder inside the project, the image folder, and inside it there are a number of images here, all of which I got from pexels.com. So you can go and find your own, but these images should be available on our GitHub page as by the time you are watching this lesson. So check it out or find your own. Alright, so let's go ahead and add our background image here. Alright, so we give it the class of header height like this. Oh, sorry. Now we want to give it a minimum height. We've gone through the minimum height property before, so you should know what it does. And we want to give it 55 viewport height, and then we want to give it some border bottom. Okay, want to give it 2 pixels, want to make it solid, and want to give it the color of light, which is white. Now I want to give the background image, so this is another way of putting a dark overlay over a background image. Okay, so we've used the pseudo class after to add a background overlay over an image so that the text is more visible, the text over the image is more visible. Now we are going to use a different style, which is the linear gradient method. Okay, so you can say background, all right, and then you add linear gradients like this, and inside the linear gradient, the linear gradient is essentially, originally it is used for adding a gradient of colors, right? So you have 2 colors, or you have a color that changes intensity from one point to the other. So you specify 2 points. So from this point to that point. So for example, you specify red to black, okay, or dark red to light red. So let me try and see if I can show you what I mean. So usually you have 2 variables. So you have okay, let me just use simple colors here. Let's use the red, and let's say green. All right, so as you can see over here, so we've changed from red all the way to green, right? That's what gradient does. Okay, the third variable is the direction, but you can check more on it later. For now, I want to use an image. Okay, want to use an image along with it, and this is how you do it. For the first 2 variables, which were supposed to be the colors, we use black. Okay, but the black, will give it an opacity so that it is not completely black. So how we do that is by using the RGBA. Remember, once you put 0, 0, 0 like this, then you are dealing with black. So we want to give it an opacity of 0.6. Okay, and then we want to add the same thing for the second variable, and then the last variable, okay, will be our sorry, we have to actually close the linear gradient. Okay, so we are adding two values to the background. First, the linear gradient, and after the linear gradient, we are adding our color. We are adding the URL. Okay, you see, you go to the into the image folder, and in the image folder, I've named the image header background like this. Let's save it. Beautiful. So this is our image. Okay, so as you can see, it has it's darker, and that's because of the overlay that we put on top of it. Now if I try to change these colors, okay, so if I change this to a dark black, so you can see that it changes from dark black to lighter black. That is what overlay is used for. You can use multiple colors too, so that you have some differences and all that. So aside that, you want to give it the usual properties that we give to a background image, which is the background size, background attachment, background repeat. Okay, so you want to add all those things here. So you can use the shortcuts that we learned about before. Okay, so you can go like no repeats and center, right? You can add the background size. You can see cover, and then background attachments. You can see fixed. All right, so after adding these properties, you realize that the image is now much better positioned. Now let's go back to our HTML and turn this text. You remember we made it that. Let's change it back to white, and so that we can see it clearer. So over here, we add our text lights back to it. All right, so our text is looking much better now. Okay, there's one more thing we need to do. It's actually general styling. Okay, as you can see, when we hover over it, the link is underlined. We don't want that underlined thing, so we want to get rid of that. Okay, so we want to say anchor. We want to move all that for. We want to do that for all anchors. Okay, once you hover over it, you want to move the text decoration. You want to make it none. Okay. Once again, I want to use the important keyword just in case. So now you can see the underline is gone. All right, so the next section we have to take care of is this section over here. All right, these cards over here. So what we have here is, first we have this title, all right, with some a little bit of styling, and then we have these four cards, and I've explained how they work earlier. All right, so if you go to a medium-sized screen, you have them two in a row, and then if you go down, it's just one. All right, so this is what we are going to be working on. We have a lot to do, so let's get started. All right, so let's put that under the header, and we'll add a comment here. All right, now we'll use the section semantic tag, and then we'll give it an ID of let's say programs, okay, to represent the programs that we do. All right, so inside there, first I'll add some. So I'll add a comment here that says title. Okay, that's where we are going to be adding the code for the title, and this title we'll be using it a lot. So we design it here, and then we use it whenever we need it. Right. So it's simply a div, okay, with a class of row. We are using the Bootstrap grid system right now, and inside it we have another div with a class of column. Okay, and we want the text to center, so we use text center like this. Now we have the first element inside is an h1 with a class. First, want it to be capitalized, so we use text capitalize. And then want margin bottom of 1, and then we want margin at the top of 4. Okay, and then we want the text to be red, so danger, like this. And you also want to bolden the text, so we'll put it in a strong tag. So then we see what we do, like this. Okay, now next to the H1 we have another div with a class of title. This is a special div. Okay, so if you saw what the work that we are doing, there's an underlining. This div is just for the underlining, so don't worry too much about it. So give it a class of title underline. Okay, we also give it background danger. We see why we are doing this very soon. Okay, this is just for the underlining, so it's a div that we are going to style, and we just style it as a straight line which is red, like has a red background without any text or anything in it. So we have a p element, paragraph element, and then we give it text capitalize. Also, we want the color to be this text muted, which is slightly faint, and then we want margin at the top of 2. And then we see we give you the shape you deserve. Alright, so here we are. What is left is the underlining. We will take care of it very soon. Yes, so after the title, the next thing is the cards themselves. Okay, now this is a bit complex, just a bit, so please pay attention. So we have a div once again with a class of container fluid, and then we want a margin at the bottom of 5. And inside it we have a div with a class of row. Alright, and of course another div, this is the column with a class of column. Alright, now this is going to differ a bit depending on the screen size. So we are going to use the changing columns. We looked at that earlier. So column MD, column LG, column XS, which is extra small, MD, medium, and all that. So here we want to say column MD, which is when it is medium size. Okay, we want this card to occupy 6 out of 12, right? And if it is large, want the card to occupy column large, want it to occupy 3, so that all 4 of them will be on the same line. Okay, and then other than that, which is when it is small, want it to occupy 10, so that one card will be on one line. Okay, so this is the styling for one card. We need 4 cards, so we just do one card and then we copy and paste 4 times, and then we will make the changes where it's necessary. So we'll give it a margin x of O2. Okay, so we've dealt with the div that the class will, the card will be living in. And I told you before that whenever you are going to do something like this, first you go to Bootstrap and then you copy the code and you make your changes. You don't have too much time, so I'm going directly. I'm just going to take you through what my code looks like. So when you are doing it on your own, you can just go to the Get Bootstrap, you search for cards, they'll give you all sorts of cards, examples of cards that you can use, copy, and then you modify. That's actually what I did, but we don't have that time to go online and all that. Okay, so this is the code for the card. It starts with a div, okay, with a class of card, which tells Bootstrap that this is the card, and we want the card to have a shadow. Now if I show you the final work once again, you realize that the cards have some shadows which make them a bit nicer. All right, look here, you see there's some shadow here, okay, which is from the cards and makes it quite nicer. All right, So we want the card to have a shadow, and then we want to give it a margin on the y-axis of 3. Now inside the card we have 3 things. We have an image, okay, and then there's a body, and you can have a footer, but over here we are going to use just the image and then the body. All right, so if you check out the other types of cards, you see there's even card title, there's all those things. We see some of them, and you can check out the others. So we have a div with we have an image first. So we have an image, okay, with a class of card image top. All right, like this. And there's this attribute over here. You can use it. It doesn't work currently. It doesn't work on every browser, but as we go along, as the time goes, every browser will implement it. Is the lazy loading. Okay, this what this does is that it loads the images only when they are necessary. Okay, so when the image is down in the page, when the user is not close to viewing it, it doesn't load it. Okay, so you can add these to your images so that it lazy loads, right, to reduce the amount of data that the user uses, and also to make the website faster. Okay, so the source of this image is going to be image stroke cardio stroke cardio dot jpg, like this. And of course the alt is, you can just make it cardio. This, close it, and we should have our image over here. So we will continue on the card. Next to the image we have the body of the card. So it's a div with a class of card body, like this. And inside it, of course, we have an h4 with a class of card title. I want to make the text red, so text danger, and we also want to capitalize the text. And inside we want it to say cardio. Let's see what we have. Okay, it's looking cool. Now under the h4 we want a horizontal rule, and then we add a paragraph. That's it. That's same with a class of card text. And inside here we can add some gibberish. Okay, so this is what we have so far, and as you can see, it's looking quite neat. I think it looks exactly like our final project, but there's one more thing that we have to add here, which is the link to read more. Okay, so let's quickly do that. So add that under the paragraph. So that will be an anchor element with an href. We'll talk about the href later. For now, just leave it blank. And then inside the anchor element, okay, we want to add a button. Sorry, a button element. That has the type of button, class of button. Want to see button block. All right, this is all from Bootstrap. Button and a rounded button. Want it to have an outline of danger. Okay, so you can check the Bootstrap buttons and you get all of these. And you want the button to say read more. Alright, so we have our button here looking nice and neat. So now all we have to do is actually to copy this card over here, this div, and to paste it 4 good times. Okay, so we copy and paste it 4 times, and then we make the necessary changes. And of course, the only changes, we will not be doing a lot of changes here. The only changes we'll be doing will be to change the image source over here so that the image changes, and then we will change this text. All right, and finally we change the href of this button, but we said we are not dealing with the href for now, so we'll leave it. So the image and then this text over here, so we will change it for all of them. Let me quickly do that. So for the second one, we'll change this to apps. And of course, we change the alt2 to apps, and then we change the text itself, of course, to apps like this. So let's see what we have for the second one. So this is cardio, and this is apps. We're looking good so far. So the third one is going to be the upper body. Yes, and then we will change the alt2 to upper body. And then we will change the text inside also to upper body. And then finally the last one would be the lower body. So we change this to lower body. We change this as well to lower body, and finally we change the text to lower body. And I think that will be it for the cards. Okay, so let's expand this thing a bit and see what we have. Okay, so it's working, and it's looking cool. Expand it a little more. Alright, so our design is working, it's looking quite nice. Now the beauty of Bootstrap is that even though, as you can see here, even though we haven't added any CSS to this part at all, you can see it's all nice already. So we actually don't need any CSS for these cards. We can add a few editings if you want, but we really don't need them. All right, so let's just add the underlining for this one, and I think that will be all for the CSS in this section. Okay, so let's go over to the CSS. Before we add the underlining, there's this general style that I want us to add. Okay, so we want to add some border bottom to all the sections. Okay, so we want to give them 2 pixels solid, and we want to give them the light color. Okay, let's go ahead and then give it the underlining. So we gave it the class of the title underline, if I remember well, and we give it a height. So essentially we are doing as if you are creating an element, you are editing an element. Okay, so we give the element height and then width. And remember, in our HTML, we've already used the Bootstrap class to add a background color. So an element that has some width and a height with a background color, so we only see the background color, but there's no element actually. So give it a height of 4 pixels so that it's just tiny, so that it looks like a straight line, and a width of 150 pixels, and that will be all. So we have our nice underlining over here. Moving on, the next section is this about section over here. Yeah, I think it's going to be quite simple. Bootstrap makes everything easy. Let's get started. So I'll add a section here as usual with an ID of about. All right, and another div with a class of container fluid. And inside here, another div, of course, with a class of row as usual, and give it a margin bottom of 5. And there's this class that comes with Bootstrap, the no gutters class. Essentially means we don't want spaces around the element. All right, and then we go ahead with our div, our column div. This time we want a column MD of 6. All right, so we have two elements here. We have, let me show you again. We have two main elements here. We have this image, this part with the background image, and then we have this part with the text and everything. Okay, so what happens is that this occupies 6 and that occupies 6 from medium size going up. Okay, so when we reduce all the way to small, you realize that they occupy the whole 12. So as you can see over here, but from medium going, it occupies 6, and that's why we specified column medium 6 over here. Once you specified column medium 6, it means from medium going, it occupies 6. So we have that div. That div is actually an empty div. We are just going to give it a background image. So we'll add another custom class, call it about background, like this. As I said, it's an empty element, so we won't add anything inside. And inside it, we have a div with a class, once again, of column MD6. Okay, that's the part with the text, and then we give it a padding left of 2, and then we center the text. Now remember the title that we used before. We are just going to copy it and change a few things. Alright, so I just pasted my title over here. Alright, from this way all the way here, that's the title that we created before. It's the same thing, so I just copied and pasted. What I'll do is to change this to who we are. Alright, so next we are just going to add a bunch of paragraphs, just a lot of paragraphs with nothing serious in them. So give paragraph, it's just one paragraph actually, but we use the break statement to separate them. We can also use different paragraphs. Okay, it all works. So give a class of about text, and then wants to text justify the text using the text justify. Want to give an ID of about text, and inside it we'll do a very long paragraph, so give say 100. Alright, so this is what I've done. I think I added a little bit to my paragraph. You can make it 200 lines, whatever you want, but it's just something that will fit nicely in. Okay, and then you can add break statements in between them. Okay, you can add it anywhere, but I added double so that we have more space between them. So when I go down, you see it's a lot. This is actually too much, I think. So the last thing we need to add here is an anchor, the link to the read more page. Okay, so give it an href, but once again we'll leave the href empty for now, and then we want to add a button inside. Want to give it a button type of button, of course. Want to give it a class of button, and then want to give it a width. This is how you give a width in Bootstrap, W50. Want a rounded button, and want the button to have an outline of danger, and want it to say read more, like that. So our button is down here nicely. Alright, so that will be all for the HTML. Let's look at the CSS. First, I want to add a little bit of gray to the background of the two sections, the about section as well as the program section. Okay, so I want to give them a background color, of the gray that we saved in the variable. So var, and then we see background gray. I think that's what we saved it. Alright, now give a bit of styling to the about text. We give it an ID of about text. We give it a max height, max height of 310 pixels. Now I did this to show you that, you see, even though we have a lot of text here, once I give it a max height, it means that the height of this whole part will not go beyond this, so the rest of it will be cut. Okay, and you can use what we call the overflow element. So once the rest of it is cut, you can use the overflow element, and you can use overflow hidden so that it will hide everything that exceeds the normal. Or you can use overflow. Let's try the hidden and see what we have. Right, so we have this. Okay, so we have this nice gray background. Okay, and you can, as you can see, the rest of it has been hidden. Okay, you can't see it anywhere, but you can use another value for the overflow. You can say overflow, then you put it to scroll. Let me make it overflow x, that is, sorry, overflow y, overflow in the y-axis. So once I put it to scroll, you get a scroll bar here, and then I can see the rest of it, right? But for now I just want to hide it. I don't need it, so I can keep it at hidden. And then let's go ahead and put the background image that we had here. It had the class of about background like this. Let's give it a minimum height, and we give it 450 pixels. Of course, the image itself, want to give it URL, and then want to // image slash background. Okay, so it's background2.jpg. Why isn't the suggestion working? Usually when the suggestion is not working, it means there's something wrong somewhere. All right, we will see about that later. So we'll do the no repeat and center. Okay, so everything is fine. So we have our image nice here. All right, let's give it a background size, and we see cover. And then you can add the WebKit, mods, and the other backgrounds. Not too necessary, but at a high level you may need them sometimes. Let me just put that here for you. All right, this is just to cover for different browsers and all those. This mods is for Mozilla, WebKit is for Chrome and some other browsers. So let's expand it and see. All right, so I think it's looking cool now. Looks exactly the way we want it to look. Okay, so we've reached the event section. Right, so as you can see, there are two main parts here. We have the upcoming event, which is simply a static image. All right, and then I should have put some text over it, but I think that's fine. And then we have the past events. Now this past events part, this element, this component here is what you call a carousel. Okay, however you decide to pronounce it. So there are so many ways of doing this. You can actually code it from scratch on your own using JavaScript, but Bootstrap makes it easy and with a lot less code. Okay, now this is a slider, an image slider with text on it that slides on its own. Okay, as you can see, I'm not clicking anything, but you can see it's sliding on its own. But I can also decide to use these controls to slide it. All right, so we are going to work on this section. Let's get started. All right, so I've added my comment over here. The next thing will be, of course, to create the section, give it an ID of events, and then we'll add the title. We'll go and copy the title and add it once again. and then I'll change this to events. Alright, so after the title, we have a div with a class of container fluid and margin bottom of 5. And then inside that container we have another div with a class of row, and inside it we have of course another div with a class of column, as you expected, in this case column 10, column large. Alright, so we want it to take this the whole space, or 10 out of 12 when it is on the smallest space. Small to medium, want it to take 10, okay, but when it gets to large, you want it to take 5. So column large 5, so that it will be split into 2. Right, the static image, which is the upcoming event, takes 1/2, and then the slider also takes the other half. Okay, so give it a border, give it then want it to be a rounded div, and want a margin or 2, and then margin y of 2. Alright, so the first column we are working on over here is the static part, the upcoming events part. Okay, so we create an h4. Okay, we give it, that's the title, give it a text, we center the text. Alright, and then also capitalize it, and finally want to make the text red. Alright, and inside you want it to say upcoming events, and then the next element here will be the image. So we use the image tag. Our source is going to be the image, of course the tracking event.jpg. Give it a class of image fluid. Now image fluid makes the image nicely sized. It gives the image a proper size. And then of course you can add an alt here, but for the sake of time I'll just move on. Beautiful. So our upcoming events part is looking sweet. The next column that we have to add here is going to be the where we have the slider. So we are going to add a div with a class of column, just like the other one, column 10, and on a large screen and extra large, of course you want it to have 5, and want to also give it a border, want to make it rounded, the border rounded, and margin x of 02. Right, and inside the div, first we want an h4 for the title, okay, with a class of text center like the other one. So I'll just copy and then paste. Okay, and we want the h4 to say how do you want to say? We want the h4 to say upcoming events, sorry, past events. We have to close the h4. Alright, so let's see what we have. Alright, so this is what we have, and I think things are beginning to come together. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to copy my code for the slider, and then I'll paste it here, and then I'll show you what I had to change. But as I said earlier, if you want a slider, I said it's called the carousel. That's the proper name. So you go to the Bootstrap, get Bootstrap or W3 schools, and then you search for carousel, and then you copy the carousel code. It's that simple, and then you modify it to suit what you are doing. You should easily be able to do that. So try it and let's see, and I will show you mine. Alright, so this is my code for the carousel. It starts all the way from here. There's a lot of Bootstrap classes over here. You really don't need to worry about them. Just be careful what you change. Make sure what you change matches what it's supposed to match. Okay, so you can read a little about it on the page if you have trouble with that. Okay, so just a few things that have changed over here. So as you can see, the item is what decides these things. Okay, so I have 3 different items. Okay, I have this is the first item, this another item, and this active element is the one that shows first. Okay, or the one that is currently active. So when it changes, the Bootstrap changes it at the background. Okay, this is where I'm adding the image. All right, the image has a class of image fluid to make it nicely shaped, to keep it in the right size. As I said, there isn't too much going on here. When you copy it from the original source, you see and then you make the difference. So I've only made a few difference. There are 3 different items. Take your time and go through what I have here. All right, so I have if I should just do a quick summary of what I have here, I have the main container for the div. Okay, all right, and inside it, okay, there are 3 different items. Okay, there's this item, this one item, carousel item, and each carousel item has some image. That's the image that you see, and the text that's on it. Okay, so I have 2 major texts. There's an h5, and then there's a paragraph element, and it's the same thing that repeats 3 times. So there's nothing too complex happening here. Right, so let's save it and see what we have so far. Alright, actually I've already saved it. So let me try to go to different screen sizes and see what's happening, if it's working. Okay, so I would say our carousel is working, our whole section is working perfectly. We have this part, and then we have the slider also working nicely. I hope you've understood everything so far. If you don't understand, if you get confused at any point, it's absolutely normal. Just take your time and then go through the lessons again. Go over to other platforms and read about it. At this point, I'm seriously encouraging you to do a lot of learning on your own. It would be very, very helpful for you. Okay, there's Google. You can just Google. You can go to W3 schools. You can go to GitHub. I've showed you how to get materials from GitHub. You can go to YouTube. There's just too much materials out there. You take your time and then go through some of them, and you get better as time goes on. Relax, it takes time, but you get there. I'll see you in the next lesson.